Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we got a video by Austin Sweat titled The 8 Greatest Starting Fives If Every Player Was in Their Prime. So this is looking at past NBA teams, seeing which guys were on the roster. You know, like for example, if like Vince Carter was on the Atlanta Hawks, it's like you would assume Vince Carter would be in his prime, right? So, you know, the first team I personally think of is the Phoenix Suns teams with Steve Nash, you know, Kobe, Ron Artest, Pau Gasol, and I believe Dwight Howard was that starting five, right, man? Which it didn't really turn anything. But if you want to talk about washed-up players that's played for teams, look at the Detroit Pistons, man. You know, we've had Tracy McGrady washed up. We've had Allen Iverson outside of his prime. Chris Webber. I mean, really, I'm pretty sure the list goes on and on. Like, if you are going to a retirement home, come to Detroit, man. We will take you in. So let's check this out and see what these teams are. Maybe you can predict before we get going on this. Let's get it.
Today we got a good video, the best starting five if every player on the team was
awesome.
In their prime.
Any awesome video is a good video. Any video by Austin is a good video.
It turns out most teams besides the Lakers all have young players that have either yet to hit their primes or players currently in theirs, so we had to go over to all-time players. But that's alright because it turned out even better with the amount of insane teams that I found. So just to be clear, we're looking at rosters on teams throughout NBA history and finding the starting fives that would have been best if every player on that roster in that year was in their prime.
I always do this video, you know, once a year on my main channel, Crispy Flakes, guys, where I do what if every player was in their prime. Once like free agency's over, I'm gonna do it again.
We're also looking at teams after the 2000s, so keep that in mind. Number one, we got the 2009 Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash, Jason Richardson, Grant Hill,
Grant Hill,
and Shaq.
Next Michael Jordan, who was never injured.
2007 Suns were the best team of that era. They had a 60-win season and almost beat out the Spurs to most likely make it to the NBA Finals that year. But by 2009, 2 years later, veterans like Jason Richardson, Grant Hill, and Shaq joined the team. Like I said, though, they were veterans and well past their prime. So originally that team wasn't great, but if they were in their primes, Steve Nash and Amari were already an all-time great duo. But then on top of that, they would add Jason Richardson, who was a 20-point per game guy, Grant Hill, who was a multiple-time All-Star and put up 25, 5, and 5 in his best season before his injuries, and Shaq, who we don't talk enough about it of all time. So with a team like this, there's no arguing how unstoppable they'd be. Not even to mention, just thinking of how good Nash and Shaq would be together in their primes would be insane, because it would give them one of the best shooting and passing guards of all time to run.
The shooting wise, yes, but I'm pretty sure you could probably put like a fifth grader at point guard, and you know they could probably average like 3 assists in the NBA just passing into Shaq, because you don't really gotta get fancy with it. It's not like, you know, a lot of it's just dumping it into them. But you obviously got to be, like, precise because teams know that's coming, right?
Run pick and rolls with Shaq all day long. Just alone right there, they would be one of the best duos ever. Number 2, the Oklahoma City Thunder with Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kevin Durant,
this one's easy for sure.
Perkins. The team that's always talked about as the biggest missed opportunity ever. Because OKC could have kept them together and had 3 league MVPs all on one team. If they did stay together, they wouldn't have all been able to develop into being as good as they have gotten today.
Especially Harden.
And for this scenario, assume they all would have reached their full primes on one team. Now, the point of this video isn't to decide whether these lineups would have worked out or not, even though I don't think this one would today, but that's besides the point. The point is to look at these teams and
way too much clashing,
assuming that everything did work out. So in the front court, Kendrick Perkins is pretty irrelevant, but I would easily say that Serge Ibaka's prime years have
okay, I'm not trying to hate on Kendrick Perkins. He was a piece of the Celtics championship team. He was a piece. For this type of team, you want a guy like Perkins out there, a guy that's just like, well, I don't got to touch the basketball. I could just kind of be here and hang out, play a little defense, grab some rebounds. Like, he's he would be pretty essential to like a big ego team, I think.
Last few on the Raptors. And now as a stretch four that can defend, that's the perfect complement to playing with 3 former league MVPs. And in a world where this trio does work all in the
Serge be killing
Westbrook stops caring about scoring, averages maybe 15 a game with the near triple-double, and does all the small things for the team. While James Harden and Kevin Durant really do the majority of the entire team scoring.
The issue there is Russell.
And that part of it would definitely work, because KD never has an off night. So when things aren't falling for James, Durant will be there to more than make up for it. Number 3, the Warriors with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and DeMarcus Cousins.
We basically saw that.
Probably the closest we've gotten to actually seeing them all play in their primes. But even then, we were still very far off from it. We saw these guys all play together in 2019, and by that point, Steph and KD weren't really close to their MVP forms due to having to play with each other. Draymond Green really fell off, and DeMarcus Cousins was obviously coming off of that ruptured Achilles. But imagine if we took one of, if not the greatest MVP season of all time, and put that Steph along with Klay Thompson's 2019 season.
But if KD was on that team, I don't think Steph would have won MVP whenever they had the ball
enough.
enough.
Draymond Green's 2017, where he won the Defensive Player of the Year, all wrapped together with
those guys are still that good. It's just it wasn't that it was playing together.
11 and 4 in
the numbers.
2017 for the Kings. Man, I mean, Cousins was shooting 6 threes a game that year, so he would have actually been a dominant big man down low and still fit in with the Splash Brothers and the Warriors type of play. The scoring, the floor spacing, the blend of offense and defense would have all just been off the charts and the best combination of it that we've ever seen, which in my mind definitely makes this maybe the best starting five of the video, because the lineup's missing nothing and they would have all worked great.
Bro, he just sounded like Dom 2K
4,
with how he talked
the
right
Nets
there.
with Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Paul
like,
Pierce,
like
Kevin
the way he was
Garnett,
talking.
and Brooke Lopez. This is the one and only time, the only video where the 2013 Brooklyn Nets will ever get talked about in a positive light, because
that team was trash.
Originally they were trash. God. And at the time, none of these guys were in their primes. Well, aside from maybe Brooke Lopez, but one could even argue that he's been more effective in terms of team wins while in the Bucks than he ever was on the Nets, but we'll get there. So like I said, this team
he
was
was
bad,
the go-to
but
on the
alternate
Bucks,
universe,
I'm sorry, on the Nets for a long time.
Utah Jazz Darren Williams teamed up with the 2010 Atlanta Hawks Joe Johnson, who wasn't putting up his best numbers that year, but definitely was playing his personal best, and combined them with a prime Paul Pierce, MVP Kevin Garnett, and probably Brooklyn Nets Brooke Lopez, they'd finally have a great team. I mean, considering that they'd all be in their prime.
D-Will was a problem with the Jazz, if you all remember.
The flashiest team, but no doubt they definitely win some championships. I don't know though. It sounds great on paper, but I still just can't get too excited about this one. I guess I'll just always be clouded with all those terrible memories of seeing these guys together. Number 5,
is he a Nets
the
fan?
Celtics with Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Shaq. And number 5 Twitter, because as you
what about Rashid?
Shaq did play for the Boston
What
Celtics
about Rashid?
for 1 year in 2011, while Boston's Big Four still played there. So that means that we would have these 5 all in their primes. Rondo's prime was
damn,
on the Celtics when he was competing to really be the best point guard in the NBA, racking up what we thought at the time was a lot of triple doubles. Ray Allen's best personal season was on the Supersonics when he put up over 26 a game. Paul Pierce's prime was on the Celtics, KG's was in his MVP year, and Shaq's was
that team would be sick. That team would be sick.
In general, without them even being in their primes, keep
I
in
want to
mind,
think
their
about
best
it.
center that they ever played with was Kendrick Perkins, and now we get to replace him with prime Shaq, as well as have the rest of the dramatically better players. It'd be over. And adding Shaq doesn't create any problems either. Rondo's more than willing to pass rather than score. Ray Allen's always been okay with being one of, if not the best spot-up shooters of all time. Paul Pierce would be the ball handler and main second scorer, in this case in the Kobe Bryant role, while KG would do a little of everything. Plus, he can shoot from the perimeter to get out of Shaq's way.
I take KG as the second option.
Shaq would be Shaq. Number 6, the Spurs with Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, Tracy McGrady, and Tim Duncan.
T-Mac didn't even play that
we
season,
have
though.
A pretty underrated one that you might not have thought about, and probably for a good reason. Because remember that in 2013, Tracy McGrady did play on the San Antonio Spurs, even though he didn't play a single regular season game for them, and only played 6 games in the postseason, and didn't score a single point. But hey, he was still on the roster, and we'll go together with these 4 who already won a championship just by themselves. But this time we'd get to include him, and all of these guys would be in their primes. We did get to see how dominant Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim were all in their primes together.
Probably the best trio of all time, right guys?
While Kawhi's in his prime right now, so we'd insert this version of him and prime T-Mac to go with them, and basically they'd be
I'll take Raptors,
because
Kawhi.
To already one of, if not the best big three of all time, we're adding one of the all-time greatest scorers in T-Mac, and one of the all-time greatest two-way players in Kawhi Leonard, who also averages 25 plus points a game. So they cover both grounds of offense and defense, and adding them doesn't add any additional problems, which means they'd just be that much better. Number 7, we have the Cavs, and this one's exciting because let's not forget who was on the Cavs roster.
Oh yeah, D Rose.
We had Derrick Rose, who really
didn't
do much at the time originally, but in this case he'd be in his MVP form. Also, don't forget they had Dwayne Wade for about 40 games, so he'd be in his 2006 championship form. There was LeBron, Kevin Love, who'd be that dominant 26 and 15 guy that we all miss from his Timberwolves days.
Oh, that's a hell of a
Thompson. But okay, right off the bat, the downside here is 3-point shooting. The only great outside shooter in this 5 is Kevin Love, so that would be the downside. But I'm sure they'd
wasn't Isaiah Thomas on that team too, or am I wrong about that? Right? Because then I'm putting probably LeBron at the 4, Kayla. Okay, I don't know if that would work. Okay,
great enough to make up for it.
Thompson
Wade and
could
James
stay.
dominated while they were together, and while they were, neither man was in their primes. So just imagine how good they would be if they were both in theirs when they were a duo. But then combine that with the rest of these three guys playing at their best.
That's nasty.
I mean, James, Wade, and Rose are all unselfish enough to make it work, and Kevin Love would dominate the boards and could average at least 20 a night off wide open threes. So there's no doubt this would be one of the greatest lineups ever. Then for number 8, we don't just have one lineup because we couldn't. There was too many to choose from.
Dwight Howard,
So we're
LeBron.
gonna quickly go through all of them. For the first, let's not forget about the 2004 Lakers, where very old in basketball
with Gary
terms,
Payton,
and Karl Malone joined Kobe Bryant and Shaq. Originally, the team ended up not being very good, and it broke their three-peat streak. But if they were all in their primes,
I mean, the Pistons did
we'd
that.
have Gary Payton from the Sonics, who is one of the best defenders ever. Probably 2006 Kobe, who averaged 35 a game. Rick Fox, who isn't exciting. Then Karl Malone and Shaq, who really just speak for themselves. And this one's interesting because we basically know how good Kobe and Shaq were together in their primes. Gary Payton would work well with them, but we'd actually get to see how good Karl Malone was without John Stockton. And that's one of the lineups. The next one, though, of course, is the 2013 Lakers, where their 5 was this: Steve Nash,
that was
Bryant,
my
Ron
prediction.
Artest, Pau Gasol, and Dwight Howard. And obviously, as we did see in 2013, none of these guys were in their primes while they were on the same team. Respectively, for the most part, they were all still very good players, but past their primes and facing injuries. Had that not have been the case, though, and they were all
Nash
still
had
in their
bad back
primes,
issues.
it'd be nearly impossible to beat, because we're talking about the former MVP Steve Nash, Pete Kobe, the Pacers Ron Artest, who, keep in mind, was a 20-point per game defensive player of the year, Pau Gasol, and prime Orlando Magic Dwight Howard. So Kobe's the leader of the team, obviously. Steve Nash and Dwight Howard would make an insane duo. I mean, imagine Nash and Amari, but twice as good. Artest as the defensive stopper, and Gasol as the 4th or even 5th option in all this. So this one makes for a very satisfying 5. Then for the last Lakers lineup, we honestly have to look towards today's Lakers. Prime Celtics Rajon Rondo, Spurs playoff Danny Green, prime LeBron, prime Anthony Davis, and again, prime Dwight Howard.
Yeah,
so
good team, but I think there's better in here.
Already contending for a championship, but adding in 2 more superstar players. And we can only imagine how good that would be. Let's hear your guys' favorite 5, though. Comment them down below and let
No, these were all pretty good. I mean, I can't really think of anything better. If you guys do, let me know in the comment section below, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and peace out, my friends.